Welcome. I'm Sean Bond from PsionicLeague. Welcome to the show. We have an amazing guest, Tony Rodrigues, on. He is many things. A whistleblower for the secret space program, has many experiences, ET contactee, has gone into some rarities in himself as well as he explores the unknown and translates it to many of our viewers. Thank you for being on.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me, man. It's been a long time. We've pinged back and forth for years now, just messaging, and I've watched some of your videos in the past. I make it a point not to study a lot of other people's accounts, just because if I echo it, then it's like I get a lot of fingers pointed at me like I'm stealing. And so I learned early on to just quit studying other people's accounts of being abducted or just involvement with any of the black programs, because it's just there's so many professional naysayers out there. So plus nowadays I don't have a lot of time, but I watched your videos early on, and I'm familiar with your account, and thanks for coming forward, and thanks for having me today. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Honored. Be fun. So I guess we can just get into it, and any questions you have for me, I have a bunch for you. So what kind of things did you experience going through your memory retrieval into why you may have been picked specifically, and you remember? Because I remember you being told that they were dominating in a way, and kind of made you into not to any because you're a sovereign being in yourself, but how the military likes to. I was their dogs or slaves or all that.
I was a slave. That was my I was a slave. I was referred to as a clone a few times, but I basically did the entire 20 years as a piece of equipment. And that was the extent of my rights. I was treated like a piece of property, piece of equipment, and I was a slave. I did hard labor sometimes, but I did a laborious jobs, and for no pay. I got paid a little at the very end, but basically I was taken, and it was free labor. And that if you think about the capability of the program, the technical capability of being able to take somebody and wipe their memories and train them to do whatever you want and work them for 20, there was a 20-year limit on it, 20-year increment was with whatever technology that I went through. There have been other people that said they've gone longer that have come forward, but the technology that put me through it was in 20-year increments. So some people had the genetics to go 20 years and go back, and then live 20 years and then do another 20 years and go back. So some people could do it like that, but I was told that the 20-year mark, if you went past 20 years, that it greatly increased your chances of having a mental problem. They put you back, like being mentally handicapped. So they capped it. It was a law about it at 20 years. So, but for that time, I was basically, and like I said, if you think about the capability of taking somebody for 20 years with having their memories erased and training them to do and be whatever you want them to be, and then being able to put them back into their age, regress them, put them back in time, and you lose people when you talk about time travel across the board, and put them back just a few minutes after they were originally taken. That's a very, very, if you looked at it in the terms of an economical way, it's a very, very quick way to make a vast fortune by having a free labor force. And that's kind of what I went through. I was just taken, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. I wasn't groomed for it. A lot of the soldiers, people that are soldiers or scientists, are groomed for it from birth. They're early on, their genetics are caught, and there's people that they keep an eye on, and they're groomed for it through their life. Then they're taken, and they have one career that they do for the whole time. So then it's harder to remember because it all kind of blurs in. It's easier to forget one blurry, boring career or whatever it is. I was taken, and I actually did time on Earth. I was shuffled around because I was kind of an excess. I wasn't groomed for it. I was an excess. piece of material for them. So they, when one program was done with me, they shuffled me to another one. And at the end, to answer your question, I was combative throughout the entire process of the return. I did not want to forget. I, at the very end, the very last 6 months or so of my time out there, it is called a career return. I call it a 20-year tour. Some people call it a 20 and back. There's been a lot of speculation. People go whatever. It doesn't matter what you call it. But at the last 6 months, I got demoted from where I was. So I was a slave, and then I went on to work for ships for the Ceres colony, which is what's behind me, the planetoid Ceres. There's a colony inside of it, Ceres Colony Corporation, and I made it up to cargo engineer, and I got demoted. I got punished for being insubordinate, for not obeying orders on a mission. And the last 6 months were pretty. I lost a lot of my, free reign. I lost my pay. I lost my ability to go see the people that I knew. I was deeply in love with. I had a girlfriend, and I didn't want to go. When my time was up, when they put me back, I did not want to go. So I was combative throughout the entire process of erasing my memories. I told myself I'm not going to forget this. I want to remember, and I just drilled it in my head. So I worked with people since I've come forward, and it's very important to distinguish that the person you are in your normal life, the person that I am, Tony, today, is not the same person that went through those programs, that went through that experience. I was the same person in essence, and I had the same capabilities, the same abilities, but I had learned to be a different person. I had different behaviors, and I was a different person. So it's important to distinguish the two. When you work with somebody, times that I've worked with somebody that it's clear that they've gone through the same thing, I always want to differentiate and say, look, that person may not want to be remembered, or that person that you were may have chosen to be remembered. So there are many people that see horrible things that don't want to remember it. When they go through the process, they welcome the process of having their memories deleted, being blanked. And a lot of people, I think, run up against that. So there are two free wills involved, even though it's the same person. There are two wills involved in the decision of getting memories back. And for many good reasons, a lot of people don't want to choose not to remember. People that begin to get memory flashes, and then they come across our info, and they see it, and they go, "Man, I know I went through something like that." They get their memory, they get some memories back. They're keystone memories, I call them, and they run up against a wall because subconsciously that other person says, "No, I don't want to remember this." I knew it. A girl that I knew while I was up there would say it frequently. Whatever cocktail they feed you to make you forget, I'm going to order a double shot. That's what she said over and over whenever the conversation came up, because she had no desire to remember the abuse that she had suffered. And it's common. And again, think about the technology, the ability to abuse the technology. When you can take somebody, it's bad enough when you talk about taking people that are groomed to be a soldier and being combat effective. But when you think about taking people that are just strong, a man, and using them for hard labor, but then think about a beautiful woman, what she could go through being taken and then erasing their memory. So, it doesn't matter what we do to you, because you're not going to remember it anyway. That was how they justified much of the abuse. The ETs very, very much were on board with that. You're not going to remember it anyway. So I think that, and this is my biggest, what I'm most proud of is proving them wrong, because I heard it over and over again. I had surgeries on me, very painful procedures that they didn't bother with anesthetic or any worrying about the pain, because they said, you're not going to remember it anyway. And I remember being so pissed off. And I'm very proud of the fact that I not only remembered it, but have been fortunate enough to speak the story too.
Thank you for being brave into that. Appreciate it. Teaches and triggers memory activation a lot of people, and what you've done. It's not easy to get the memories back, especially when things engaged in time travel to control the populace and to keep the saddle on humanity as we rise up into our power and become who we truly are. And spirit's what we came here to do as like sleeper cell agents for hope and change on the planet and bringing this psionically emergent species to its fullest that will change the rest of the universe. Um, yeah, a lot of questions. I'll like go through them. So, hmm, what process for like people going through that process do you recommend? In like you don't have to go fully into details of what you wanted to go into, and how did your remembering stages start going?
That's a great question. That's a great thing. It's funny. I just this morning I went through some messages, and a person contacted me that they asked me basically the same thing. What do I do with this? I'm starting to get memories. What do I do? Where do I go from here? Do you know anybody that can give me a hypnotic regression? That's what's the question from him. And I um I think hypnotic regression is we're gonna see more of it in the future. I think that's where this is heading. Is you're gonna get a handful of people that are familiar with the SSP phenomenon, the blank slating, and just the 20, the career return, the 20-year tour. Most regressionists aren't even aware of that. So when things come through, they're hearing about spaceships and living in the solar state. They're assigning it to past lives. It was your past life. You were an alien. You were an ET, right? So that's because they're unaware of it. So you're starting to get regressionists now, very talented hypnotic regressionists that are aware of what people can go, what's the possible. So it goes in that. I think we're heading in that direction for when somebody begins to get memories. I think that's one of the more effective things. However, a regressionist really implants a lot of memories. And so it's a dangerous thing. What I always recommend is that somebody that's going through the early stages. So what I found was that the emotional times came through the clearest. You know, I got beat up. I got beat up one time while I was up there on Ceres, and that's a clear memory. You know what I mean? Because it was emotionally rooted. It was not, you don't remember brushing your teeth. I do, even though I do now. But in the beginning, when I first got my memories, they were always very emotional spikes, very happy days, very, very sad days, bad things that happened, and very good things that happened. Those were the memories that came through first. And really, I never had forgotten them. I just couldn't justify them most of my life. Like when I grew up and through my life, I would have memories that feel like a dream. They come in reoccurring dreams, but it's different. It's a memory. It's, in a dream, you don't remember how you ride in the train to get there. You just remember being there and then zapping somewhere else. There's no memory in between. Whereas these memories come through and there, you can kind of, if you think about it, you can trace through like, wow, I rode a train to get there. And I took a shower wow, like you can get it. I had those memories, but I didn't understand when they could have happened, so I just brushed them off. It wasn't until I learned about Randy Kramer's account, I saw his exopolitics interview, and he explained the time dilation and how they do it, the 20-year tour, the 20 and back. And I said, that's what they did to me. Oh my God. And that was real. And then as soon as I opened up one of those memories then and thought to myself, that happened. That was real. Then more came. Once I had that acceptance, then more of them came. They just flooded in. And it was a period of 6 weeks to 3 months right in there. I got big chunks of memory, you know what I mean? Like just years and years of memory. They all kind of unfolded. And the early ones were not pleasant, but not unpleasant. And then later on, as I got, like I said, it was all about acceptance. Like it's still in my day-to-day life, I have to remind myself of what I went through. When I sit down to talk to you or somebody like this, I take a minute and I go, man, that happened. Like I've got a little checklist of things in my head that I remember that are undebatable. There are things, fortunately, because I was on Earth and because of when I came forward, there are things that really support my case that are undebatable. So because you don't want to believe it yourself, if it was proven, if somebody came and proved me outright wrong to myself, everything that I remember, I would go, yep, you're right. Something must be someone else crazy. and I'll just get on with my life. But that hasn't been the case, and my attempts to do so have panned out in the other direction, that it actually happened. Like whenever I look up a tax record of somebody that I remember, or you know what I mean, whenever I kind of pan out some of the details, they seem to support my case every time. Yeah. But the memories happened like that, and dealing with accepting them was a big step to it. You know, you have to accept that this happened to you. And after that, it was just about I wanted to talk to somebody. I was all alone. You know, once I had went on Google and found places that I knew my way around very well, that I'd never been for, that Tony, that I in my life had organically had never ever been to. Like, you know what I mean? I looked on Google Earth and I found areas that I knew my way around that I'd never been to. So that was a strange experience, and I wanted someone to talk to about it. And then, back then, there really wasn't anybody doing this, so or speaking about it. There was a few people, but they were kind of behind the glass. You know, you couldn't contact them. So I think that was the biggest thing. And then being able to talk out the things that I remember have been really the therapy about it, and able to deal with the harder things that came too. You know, there was a lot of abuse, especially in the younger years, and I saw some very bad things that we're seeing still to this day, seeing play out before us right now, very publicly. We are seeing continuations of what goes on in those programs play out publicly. So I don't know if that answers your question. If I went on a tangent.
That was great. Yeah, yeah, it's had similar stuff. Temporal dilation, quite mind-numbingly, like kind of blowing-ish. Until like when you find out, oh, they have the technology, and oh, chronovision, oh, the Vatican sciences, oh, the Philadelphia experiments, all the Tesla temporal vortal tunnel technology, and uh, going forward down that rabbit hole of, oh, the things exist in these compartmentalized projects. Yeah, it's and especially with the rules, like there's light and dark force. They seem to be like vying for what's going on with us while not interfering with us. It's like a chocolate souffle of us learning how to come out of slavery into coming into our sovereignty and stop giving our power away to other saviors. And then the temporal dilations of other timelines where we're taken off to do other things can exist as long as they put us back as if they never messed with us. As long as there's that not non-interference kind of schematic with whatever they do with us, to sometimes to where it be abusive. As they bring us back, then they seem to be able to get away with that. And there's things trying to uphold that, but it's a lot to deal with.
Okay, so it was my understanding that technology was one of the very first things that any species would trade with a new species in the intergalactic. In other words, when a planet like ours came out of the pre-World War I era, went from horses to spacecraft and made contact. And they said, well, of course, the very first thing you or I would say, if we had a UFO, if we had an anti-grav vehicle and made contact with an advanced species, the very first thing we would say is there anything you can trade with us? Is there anything you can give us, any technology that would help us out? And it was my understanding that it's a life extension technology, really. It's about life extension. And that's the very first thing that they offer up. So it's very widespread throughout the cosmos. So it's very well regulated. It's a cookbook with a science to it, and they know exactly what they're doing when they give it to a species that really isn't ready for it, which is us, which is why the abuse is still carrying on, because we weren't ready. And so now we're getting to that point. We're going to get a disclosure, whether they like it or not, and people are going to get people are going to have to. Well, we'll see. I think a lot of it's still up in the air. What disclosure is going to look like, and what people. The way you touched on earlier, I think that we're starting to see it, like with the Navy releasing pictures of I just saw it today. Like there are a few trade groups that I'm in online that are just buying and selling, like, garage sale kind of stuff. And they were talking about the Pentagon's UFO footage. And by reading the comments and the responses, they're not ready to accept the fact they are not ready yet. There are a lot of people. I think the majority of people, a friend of mine calls them normies, the people that are just, you know what I mean? They would rather not look at UFOs. They'd rather just go to the shopping mall, and they're normal. And I think a lot of them they're starting to get the poke right now, the pill of that there are UFOs. That's what that is. They're starting to get the beginning of it, and they're not ready to accept it yet. And they're gonna have to accept it. We're gonna get a huge report here in another month, and it's coming. They can't hold it back any longer. It's time, kind of thing. But people are not ready, and then you got to think about not only that, when they do think about extraterrestrial life, they're still gonna assume that it's very far away and very sporadic, that there's not very much. They're not going to know that there's a huge infrastructure, that they are beneath our feet, they are above us, they are among us in vast numbers, and then throughout our solar system there are hundreds of species, as well as 100 or 2 colonies that we made from breakaways, humans, throughout the last 100 years. So there's going to be some very big pills to swallow for the normies, and we're seeing it happen. And what's that?
Suppository.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot. Yeah, well, that's what's going to happen. If we wait till they're ready, that it'll never happen. If we wait to disclose until the public is ready for disclosure, it will never happen. It won't happen. It's like having a child. If you wait till you're ready to be a parent, you'll never have a kid. You get what I mean? Like if everybody would have waited until they were the best time in their life to have a child, no one would have ever been born. So this is what disclosure is going to be. We can't wait for them to get ready for it. We're way past that. It's just got to happen, and they're going to have to accept it.
And it's not just a dynamic of, if they're ready or not. The society is making them unready for most things. It's like I've heard the comedian Jimmy Dore. It's like most people walking around like alcoholic children, where they think they know everything and they stop taking information.
Yes.
It's mostly mind control. There's many different ways, but it's fracturing. It's full of pain. They're like dumping negative crap onto them, having to do with controlling everyone, and that like going into that dynamic where they have to control their own bubble of reality past like any incurring data, whether it be positive or negative, that goes against their belief.
That connects a lot of dots, I think. And what I found is that these are people that are doing well in the system, in the financial system. These are people that they make a good living, so that justifies them feeling superior to the masses, to everybody that doesn't make as much as them. And therefore, it shuts them off from taking information from anybody. You get what I mean? Like a lot of people equate income with knowledge. Yeah, directly if you were smarter than me, you'd earn more than me, kind of thing. That's the mentality. So you can't tell them, you can't bring anything new to those people that are doing well in the system, and they will violently push back against any criticism of the system itself that they're in that justifies them be feeling superior. And that's where we're at. So if you live in an area that's very well off, and then on the other opposite of the spectrum, people that are under the heel of the system also don't want to accept any kind of new data, because it doesn't lead to change to it. I mean, I don't know exactly all of it, but it seems like the people that are in poverty also don't search for new information. Yeah, so when it's presented, we're going to see there's going to be a big shakeup. The bottle of the world is going to be shaken up.
Yeah, whether it be like materialistic gain, which still is abuse, like to keep going for that carrot and stick, or if they're keep struggling in like the ground root base consciousness of like their flowering of existence and expansion and knowingness, then they're not going to go outside what they need at their to keep going, which is why poverty is set in by the elite to make it easier to control people. They have no time for this stuff. And then, yeah, it's like, oh, well, we can't do disclosure yet. The people aren't ready. Oh, you just caused like this big event politically that like forces everyone into survival. Oh, that was great.
That's the plan. So I don't know. I hope that the next few years of us aren't so ominous. It seems like, with the lockdowns we've had, with the recent health scare that we've had over the last year, it was very, the timing of it was suspect. And, I just talked about this yesterday on a show, and it's kind of like if you're playing a game of cards and you're playing a poker or whatever, a game of cards, and it's you and a partner, and then there's two other partners, and they just keep winning and winning and winning, but you can't prove that they cheated, that they're cheating. But that there's a red flag there because nobody can win. Nothing, the cards are random and nothing is like that. That's kind of what we've seen over the last few years, is that everybody's on the same page. All these corporations are on the same page over and over again. And they're pushing something on you that you can tell something's wrong, right? So the red flag is there, but you don't really know how they're doing it or what's going on. We don't really know. It's the card game. We don't know how they're cheating, but you can see that they're cheating because the cards don't do that in normal life. The world, the universe, it doesn't work like that. And now we're being told to just hush and line up and get your shot. And that's it. And get your treatment. And so I don't know if anything's wrong with that, but I can tell that the method is wrong. That what's going on? Do you get what I'm saying? Like the method is wrong because they're all in the same page. Because you can't speak up in the other direction. So it's not the actual process. It's the delivery of the process that is very wrong. That's suspect. That is a huge red flag right now. That's what I don't believe is, and I hope it's not ominous. But I hope that it's not an ominous thing. It seems like it could be ultimately harmless. Maybe they affected some change, and maybe they're all on the same page that we all have a better day ahead of us. But just the delivery of it is something that's just so fishy these days. What's going on, and we are in pre-disclosure years. So I mean, one would expect the world to get nutty before that. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I feel like the planets eat more waking up, and it's becoming fairly obvious though that the news doesn't cover it because 90% of the media is taken over by five corporations from used to be hundreds, monopolies buying up all of them. Strategic, nothing to see there. And then making it so that none of this information gets out, so a bunch of rich people deciding what poor people should believe, and then slowly making more of a income inequality gap and killing out the middle class by making all of small businesses shut down, and then having a simulation right before this event for the same type of event, with an AI running the simulation of what they have to do. And then a bunch of disclosure movies coming out about like a plan, and then like the Bilderberg groups going like heavy into like wanting decreased numbers so it's easier to control the population. I mean, any forced penetration is rape, really.
Yeah,
mandatory anything. It's mandatory. It's not virtuous. If it's someone has to force you to do it, it's not virtuous. And then them bullying you into the mentality is also red flag. If you're not allowed to, if you just call it the science, and you're not allowed to question science, it's not science. It's scientism. It's a belief system. It's a religion. It's a cult. But you don't call it science. Science is to know something, and the Nessians to not know something.
Well, we're not following
people are like, on this science, because they don't know anything about it, and they're not allowed to know anything about it. And it's not for our health because they take wealth over health for this, because of the patents, and you're not allowed to know what's in it. And
oh yeah, right. Well, it's not the science that we've established over the last 50 years about all this. Since I think it was in 47 or 57 that the CDC was founded. I forget, but when they began vaccinating people, it was the same time they put fluoride in the water. It was the same year, basically in the same legislation they began treating the fluoride and vaccinating people. And they've established a rule set of science that, the way it works. And what we're seeing this year with our treatment that they're prescribing is nothing like any of that. It's a completely different system. The science that there are protocols for it, and they totally got skipped. And so it's just fishy, man. Like I said, I hope that it's not ominous, right? I hope that it just blows over and I'm wrong and that's it. But just the delivery of it is very fishy, and
Well,
it doesn't support the science. The science isn't supported one bit.
mm, yeah, I have faith in humanity will overcome the lower, yeah, IQ is not a fixed number. Anyone can improve it. But the lower IQ people that just go along with whatever the authority figure says because they don't question, they didn't have a wound showing that their um, daddy authority government is not really for their benefit yet. So until they do, the last, if you don't learn from any other teacher, the last teacher is suffering. I mean, I think humanity is resilient, so we'll overcome anything and pass like any like plan they had. But I guess the biggest concern I'd have is if you want to have children, probably stay away from things that alter your genetics because it can be that like one little switch is like the difference between fertile and not fertile, and even walking or walking, not walking. So
Yeah,
whatever.
we're gonna know in another. It's gonna be a year or two before we see really what the impact is of what's been going on.
Yeah.
It is a very real thing that they do want to reduce the population for whatever reason. It's a very, very real thing. And whether this is the method of it, they've talked about it.
There's multiple
The whole Bill
whatever they
Gates,
do.
the whole Bill Gates thing, envelope of information is just heart wrenching to think about.
What, like
When I was
his divorce thing that's going on.
well, no, just his whole career in vaccinations. When you look at what he's done in other countries, Microsoft has been sued or the Bill Gates Foundation has been sued and banned from other countries. He's went in and crippled hundreds of people with vaccinations, and so they're testing out what they were doing. They're highly involved in this, high up in this. It's just heart, like I said, it's heart wrenching the average person doesn't even want to look at this stuff for long because it's so terrible to learn about. So the average person, like you said, the people that don't want it, that just take their information from one place, it's because they're just outsourcing it. The intake of information, they're just letting somebody else gather information for them and then give it to them, kind of like McDonald's. Instead of cooking your own meal and your own healthy meal, they're just going to McDonald's for information, and they're getting a quick thing and then they go back about their day because it's kind of like it's the lazy route, or they're just too occupied to have time for it. And so a lot of the information that people need to learn is not there.
You survival.
When I was on Ceres Colony, we were aware of other systems. So it was a secret that life on Earth, from the populace, the civilians on Ceres Colony were told that the Earth was destroyed. The military knew because we went to Earth. So I was in the know because we went to Earth and did trade missions. We took cargo. We picked up cargo on Earth and brought it back. And so for that reason, anything that it went through, like there was a bootleg industry, but it was very, very tightly. There was a lot of security around it. They didn't want the average person, to know. And we would always say, I remember we would always ask people that were, ranking officials, if you sat around and just kind of water cooler talked with them, we'd always say, what happens when the Earth can fly out here and the people learn? What are you going to do? What's going to happen this is a big lie. What happens when you can no longer keep a lid on it and everybody finds out, A, that you're up here, that we're up here, and B, that they're down there? And the answer was always pretty much the same. We'll worry about that when it happens, when it gets close to it, and we'll probably have some kind of cataclysm. Then we'll go through with it, and we'll bomb the Earth. If they get up here, if they could fly up here and discover us, we'll just put the Earth back into the Stone Ages. That was what they planned. That was their plan. And I think that was the running plan until they got interfered with by other beings. I think other beings have came in since then and interrupted that and said, no, you can't. You're not going to have a mass die off. You have to find some other way around it. So
It's so interesting
that was
how
their legitimate way that they were thinking.
it's so interesting how like the factionized colonies that need to maintain a lie to get the people motivated to stay where they are and not rebel. Um, think they have the authority and that they own the planet to where they could just destroy it and not have any consequence for that. Like, so like, there's a lot of protection for the planet. I mean, it likes to tend to let people do what they want to do, like in local bubbles reality, especially on the surface. Everything underground is like, I don't need to mess with your drama. But like, if they really mess with the planet, then they'll totally come out and be like, "What are you guys doing?" And then fix the child fight. But or if there was a big catastrophe, they'll just go back in time and stop it. There's different factions I found. But yeah, Earth seems to be like this mother adopter for all these species from near extinct worlds that have had their planet blown up or whatever, and then they came as refugees and adopted by her. So they're full of things that are very wounded from those types of events and have the vigilance to stay on top of it from happening again to this point.
Our entire solar system is quite popular. The entire popular may not be the right word, but our entire solar system is kind of a middle ground for many species. So not only the Earth, which gets spillover of that, we're on the surface, so we get, but the entire solar system is basically a crossroads between one place and another, between galaxies. So entire galaxies come and then they set up shop in our solar system because there's a portal here that lets them go to other galaxies out near Jupiter. So it is popular. So maybe popular was the right word. It's a popular place to establish an outpost for advanced species that are traveling from galaxy to galaxy. And because of that, it's, one person just doesn't dominate it, or one group doesn't just dominate it and dictate everything. And because that does happen in other places. So there are systems where the people begin to learn and they just go and wipe them out. And that's that. But because of where we're at, we have kind of a prime real estate that it's not so easy to agree to just kill everybody off. And we share an existence like you're you and I'm me, but because we live on Earth and because our consciousness is here, we kind of all have you've heard of people say the oversoul. There's an oversoul. There's a focus level that after you die, that you basically lose your individuality and become part of a greater consciousness. And that's resident here. So when you get enough people, that consciousness becomes very, very powerful and can dictate great things. So that's, I think, the main reason they're behind depopulation, because smaller oversoul is more easy to manipulate in the 3D.
Yeah.
Wow, that got deep fast, Sean.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the different chess game it has to do to delay the awakening of people's awareness through like the 100 monkey effect, and like how many people gain awareness and share ideas, and inventors coming up with the same thing, different points of the planet. So what kind of species did you come across on Ceres, by the way?
There were quite a few. So there were 2 indigenous species that were there with the humans. And the humans were a breakaway from Germany, from Germans after World War II. So it was one of the colonies. The early cavern system was created by some ancient race that was there long ago, and they found the ruins of it. So they're in inside some craters. There were actually doors that opened up and had hangar systems, um, caverns that could generate air and were miles long, just vast networks that they turned into hangars for ships. And inside they found ruins of um, inside caverns that were vertical. They found ruins of compartments, living quarters that some other species had. They were underwater. So there were two species that were there. There was one that was they had like wide hips. They were ran about 9 feet tall, beady eyes, hair. They had hair, and they had kind of a bigger skull than us, an elongated, bigger skull, and not too attractive looking, that you would think. And they were in charge of most of the businesses there. So whenever there was a shop, there was one of them was the manager of it, and they were from a lighter gravity environment. So they had a piece of tech, a piece of jewelry or something in their pocket that would manipulate the gravity around them. All of the city areas had artificial gravity in the floor. The floor throughout the space programs. That's another one of the very first technologies that gets traded is the energy to power something like that, a reactor that can power artificial gravity throughout. So there were miles and miles, millions of square feet of artificial gravity. But the flooring would react to, they would have a piece of jewelry, something on it, and it would react, and the gravity around them would lower to what their natural gravity was as they moved around the colony. There was another species that was they ran about 6 or 7 feet tall. They had long, straight hair, again, a longer shaped skull, big eyes, and they had, the distance from their elbow to their shoulder was shorter and their arms were longer. So their proportions were strange looking. And they tend to do engineering jobs, technical jobs. In the hangar, I would see them all the time working on craft. Whenever they had to pull an engine out of a craft, and those were the guys that did it. They were tech engineering, that whole species. So I think that it was because they leased in the form of leasing from them that they had technology. In other words, the Ceres colony had them on board to build them or maintain engines in certain crafts, but the Ceres colony did not have the ability to remake those crafts. It was still classified to them. Do you get what I mean? But they were indigenous. The other species that were there, it was rare that a reptilian came through, but it did happen. I stood in line they called it the trade window. It was kind of like a bank. But I stood in line, from a taller, yellowish colored, orange reptilian. I thought it was beautiful, and it was in a suit. They liked to go. That they did like to be naked, but he was in an environmental suit because he had a job to do. And I thought that the scales on his skin were smaller and very tight, very detailed. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful creature. And I saw a taller blue, supposedly highly advanced being on a train once, and it was a female, and it was very impressive. She was very, if you've ever seen a, you know what I mean, like somebody on the red carpet that was just very impressive, the way that they were dressed and just had a beautiful woman that's hitting on all cylinders. It was that kind of, it was like seeing a unicorn, man. I don't know how else to say it, but I walked on the train and she was sitting there and she was taking up 2 seats because she was 9 feet tall probably, and or plus. And she just was laying sideways and she looked at me and smiled, and she had a form of jewelry that cast like a sparkly hologram, and it was just jewelry. It was their jewelry. And in between me and her in the air, you could see little holograms with like a sparkle effect. When you looked away, you didn't see it anymore. When I looked toward her, I could see it. And it was just literally, it was just a piece of jewelry. It was something, it was like a fashion. It was a form of fashion for them. And I was just blown away,
Did you ask her for a drink?
No, I wanted to say hi. I said hello. I said hello, but there was an officer in the back, and so we were also for my station for being a slave. We were under strict orders not to interact with ETs ever, never. If we saw an ET, we were not to interact with them, and which I did once. Remember I said I got beat up once. It was two ETs that did that too. One was an overweight. He had like orange hair, really curly hair. He looked more like a cat nose. And I hate describing them like dogs and cats and things because you lose people then too.
I've
But
seen a lot of the Canis and the Lyran and other Ryan. A lot
he
come up in
was
visions and
he had a cat-like face, but he was fat and big guy. And then a guy next to him looked like like a fish, but his eyes were far apart, and he had smooth skin like a fish, not scales, but like an aquatic, like a porpoise. He had that kind of skin, and he was a skinny guy. And I interacted with them. I asked them. I got lost and asked them for directions, and they basically mugged me. You know what, and I want to say that I said that in my very first interview that I ever did. I described what happened, and I've caught a lot of hell over it, describing that whole incident because people don't want to believe that ETs behave that way.
all
People
types.
just, some people. When I was young, I used to think that people that were wealthy were noble, automatic by default. That just because you were wealthy, you became noble. And I was very disappointed in my early 20s when I began to work for wealthy people and find out that it was quite the opposite. And the fact that they weren't happy, a lot of wealthy people weren't happy. And a lot of people, I think, want to believe that people that are that have interstellar flight are noble, are advanced. And many of them are, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't come by default. There are many people, the Germans, for instance, that I believe that the Ceres colony, I believe that they're not as socially advanced as we are now, as we are today. Even though we have a lot of turmoil going on, it's basically external. When you see social unrest, it's an external thing that's causing it. If you just let everybody be, we're quite advanced socially. And I think that they are not because because they have so many layers of lies and so many layers of abuse that they still endorse systemically. So just because a species has interstellar flight doesn't mean that they are more advanced mentally or socially or spiritually than we are. So there are many species that are out there flying around that are very primitive in behavior.
What's your experience and your belief in your expression of spirit, free expression of spirituality, as well as those you've encountered, as well as encountered in psionics? Because it will kind of go back and forth.
So they forced atheism on us, but I know that that's not true. One thing that I always had, there were a few times that I had complete amnesia, and I still believed in a creator. Like I believe in a creator God. And God's a biased word nowadays. So I believe in a creator consciousness that we're all part of, and that you get back to eventually, and that we're here working for by de facto, on a mission for the creation, because we are part of it. We're just an extension of the universe. So I believe that there is a main consciousness that is fully aware of 100% of everything that goes on in the universe. There's a main consciousness and that we are unaware because we only have our certain, we have our tasks that we're made for, and that's what we're doing. So yes, I'm a big fan of the law of one, and I think it hits it pretty close to the head. I believe that people that are very religious, like Christians or Muslims, or people that are very devoted to a doctrine or a religion, I believe that their relationship with God is exactly that. It's between them and God. It's none of my business, and it's nobody else's business. I believe that your relationship with God is between you and God. It's that simple, and that's religious freedom. It's when people start getting it forced upon them. Even I have children, and my one daughter started going to church with her friend when she was about 12 years old. She had a good friend, and her family invited her to go to church with her. And I thought, okay, great. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, whoa, I better get in front of this, because I don't want her to have some kind of belief thrown at, you know what I'm saying? I don't want her to be forced into a belief system. I want her to be able to do some research and make up her mind for herself. And so I went to that church. I met everybody. It was a great thing. It was like Christian Reform. Like, instead of an altar, they had a live band up there, and it was a good bunch of people. But I made it very clear to my children that there's more than just a doctrine, that they should study everything and look for the common denominator in all the religions, and because you're talking about a big thing, and that no, we don't. The fact that there are more religions than one disproves all of them, right? If it was that authority, if they had the authority that they claim, then there would only be one religion ever. And so the fact that there are many is a disproof of their authority.
It's a good reflection of our consciousness too. There's 4,000 denominations of Christianity, and they all believe they're right, and everyone else of the other denominations is wrong because they don't talk to each other and they don't want to debate anything out of truth, because they're not like for truth, they're for a belief, which like, you know, whatever anyone wants to do, that's their free will, because the expansion allows for the fulfillment of free will, but only once all the fractures in the mind are healed fully does it come to great empowerment. So eventually they should all talk and have the goal to find truth no matter what it is, but you know, do their thing in the meantime.
In the beginning,
what did you experience in
the beginning
belief too?
Well, in my younger years, I guess right around the teen years, when things started to not really make sense, and I was getting flashes of what I'd went through, memories lead through, the original abduction with an ET, those memories never got erased. The first 5 minutes, the first 30 minutes of, you know what I mean, with a gray. I had a gray in memory in my bedroom, and a couple shorter reptilians. And so those memories never ever got erased. I remembered that later that week. And the original thing, the next morning it was erased, but very soon after that I had those memories. And I began to study religion when I was like 19, 17 or 19 in there. And I read the Bible cover to cover. Then I read the Quran. I didn't read it cover to cover. Then I read the Torah. Then I read, I don't know, everything I could get my hands on, because I was looking for those ETs. I was looking for extraterrestrials. I was looking for grays. I saw a gray with my own eyes and talked to it. I was looking for that in a religious doctrine, and never found it. So that kind of, I was looking. Then I began to think, I'm connecting common denominators, but what they all say, you know what I mean, what every one of them says. I even read the 19 key, which was a satanic one, which was terrible. I would not recommend that reading. It was basically hogwash as well, that you're just an animal. But I found in the Chan Buddhists do allow for extraterrestrials. In Buddhism, there's actually, their map of the universe allows for life on other planets just like us, and that they're very open about it. And the Chan Buddhism was really the only one that I saw that was very close, that allowed that to happen. What happened to me, the Chan Buddhist religion allowed what happened to me to happen. You get what I mean? Like, a lot of people, even in my town here, and people say, well, if there was ETs, it would be in the Bible. Which the Bible, which I always come back with, you mean angels? You mean beings that live in heaven that come down to visit us and do amazing things like an angel?
No,
I mean, them by definition is an ET, because they don't live here; they live in heaven. But a lot of people, like I said, this is back to what we were talking about earlier. A lot of people are going to have the pill suppository give it to them, because, you know what I mean, they've outsourced their belief. They've read that, even spiritually. You know, we were talking about the news, that people outsource their information gathering. They, like a McDonald's. Spiritually, that's what the organized religion is too. People outsource it. They go to Sunday, they go to church on Sunday, and they get spiritual, and then they go back to their life, and they leave it to somebody else to tell them what to believe. They don't go and get in touch with their spirituality. It's the same exact thing. It's a McDonald's. Instead of cooking their own healthy meal spiritually, they go to church and just have a quick burger and then get back to their life. And they don't, you know what I'm saying? It's not nutritionally dense.
Yeah, it's lower level and then boxes that separate them. It's like, don't look at that. It's mind control. Oh, mind control cure is finding as much expansion as possible to then, through different angles, expose dogma.
So I have TonyRodrigues.com. It's Rodrigues with an S on it. TonyRodrigues.com has my website. It has a short story. I've got some t-shirts, merchandise. I've got a memory course for people that are beginning to have fragmented memories as a prequel, as a starting point to take that course. And before you do something like a regression, it's something to build a base on and expand on why you think you're remembering and what you're remembering, and just get a baseline so that you have something to work with better when you go to others for like a regression or a QHHT or any of that stuff. So that course, I've gotten a lot of great feedback from it. A lot of people are very happy. I have some links to my free interviews there, and I have a link to my Patreon channel. I have a show on Patreon. We took it there. It's $5 a month. I took it there to defend against being deleted, the censorship that's happening. So that's why I'm on the Patreon channel. I'm not trying to get rich off of it. And with my co-host, Jackie Pierce, is an amazing person, very talented girl. And I've had some great guests on there. It's a good show. Yeah, that covers the website. And then I can be reached. There's an email link there. So a lot of people email me. I had people reach out to me through Facebook, but you can't trust Facebook anymore. It's like any minute the rug could get pulled out from under me. It would be a shame, but it happens, and they don't give you any good reason. So
Right.
the email link is on the website, and so far so good. It's been good.
Yeah, thank you for plugging that. Yeah, and you guys can reach me at PsionicLeague.com, PsionicLeague YouTube, and I'm on Facebook and all that. Yeah, and let us know if you like these shows, and we may do more in the future. Thank you so much for coming on, Tony. I really appreciate it.
John, it's been great hanging with you, man. I'll talk to you very soon.
Yeah, much continued happiness to us all, and love you all very much. Have a great day. Have a good one, Tony. See you later.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye.